lava field on top of lava field on top of lava field. It stores quite a bit of groundwater. And in an area such as this, where you have so many craters, even if they haven't erupted for 1,000 years, the cores of these craters are still very hot. And the cores of the craters, they're heating up the groundwater that's being stored underneath in the lava field here. And that is creating this amazing resource that we have in Iceland called geothermal energy. The water that is underneath the lava here is of a temperature of about 350 degrees Celsius. That is just about 600 degrees Fahrenheit. So of course it is very hot, and it is in the form of steam, as water in that temperature is in the form of steam. And we have just in the last 40 years truly started to learn how to utilize this energy. And what we're doing is that the steam is used, they drill down into this lava field. The steam is used to drive turbines and create electricity. And then the water comes up. It is actually heating up cold water, which is being piped towards the city center, towards the capital area, Reykjavik as an example. And it is being used to heat up our houses, used for showers, swimming pools. Further down you're going to see it's used for a lot of geothermal farming. And we're truly just starting to learn how to utilize this amazing and abundant energy. So the area here on your left, this is where your hot water is coming from when you're having a shower in town. This is where the water is coming from underneath this lava field here. And the reason it kind of smells a bit funky is because it has, it's been heated up by a volcano, and it comes from underneath the lava field. And just to mention on that with geothermal energy, this is actually quite exciting because this is such a new technology in utilizing this resource. But Iceland, although this is a very active volcanic area, it's not the only country that has geothermal resources. We are the furthest onwards in developing technologies to utilize it. And our main development assistance today actually to countries is to help them identify their geothermal resources and to teach engineers to use it. So we have a United Nations university here for geothermal engineers. And just to tell you, one of the discoveries that has been made recently is in Ethiopia, in the Rift Valley in Ethiopia. And the geothermal resources that have been identified there, if used properly, they could literally power the whole of the African continent within 15 to 20 years. So this is a really new, exciting technology and such that is hopefully going to help us reduce the use of fossil fuels globally, and as such hopefully reduce global warming as well. Throughout the day you're going to see quite a lot of open hot springs, steam coming up from the ground. This is just open hot springs, but otherwise usually to reach very hot water they need to drill into the ground. But the open hot springs, they kind of keep it. You will come to a lovely river, a warm river that you can swim in all year round. Keeps an annual temperature of about 35 degrees Celsius, as there are hot springs that run into the river, so to say. And this is a very popular spot for people to come and hike, and easily accessible from the capital area with public transportation and such that goes down here. If you're interested in any hiking in Iceland, then this is a lovely spot to head in here. This is in the valley here towards your left as we're coming down the mountain here. that came, they came as single men, and they brought with them Irish women. The Irish women, of course, a lot of Irish women, they were kept here as slaves, and probably had a lot of kids throughout the years. So we have a large Celtic heritage here in Iceland, and in fact, if we look at Iceland per capita, then we have the second largest population of redheads in Iceland, only after Ireland, which kind of shows a bit the Celtic heritage. Vatnajökull, and we're coming into the area here where there was an eruption in the year 2010 that I'm going to tell you a bit about, and that is from the famous volcano Vatnajökull. That is so easy to pronounce. And anyone in the bus that was stuck in an airport in 2010? No, not really. No, usually is. There were about 10 million people that lost their flights or had their flights cancelled during that eruption. But this mountain range that we're going to drive across, it's a very pretty mountain range. You see waterfalls coming down from all over the place, particularly in rain such as this. Then you have increased amount of water that is finding its way from down here. This one on your left hand side, it's called rjúkandi, meaning kind of like the windy one. It's a waterfall that can take, it doesn't necessarily go down, it can go up and sideways and whatnot depending on the winds. But this whole mountain range that you're going to see, all of this has been created by volcanic eruptions underneath the ice during the development of this land here. And as such, as we're driving down here, you see that there are some fantastic formations in these mountains as well. They look all crooked and strange and twisted, and you just can see all these lava formations. Areas like this and mountains like this have also been the source of a lot of folk stories that we have here in Iceland in regards to elves and trolls and ghosts and whatnot. And in particular trolls, they are beings that live in mountains in particular. And these trolls, they eat children usually and are quite evil and horrible beings. But one thing, they have an Achilles heel, which is that they cannot stand sunlight. They only move during the nighttime. And if they are hit by the rays of the sun, they will turn to stone. And many say that the mountain range that we have here in Eyjafjöll, that this is actually a graveyard of trolls the whole way through because of all these interesting formations. But otherwise, if you want the scientific approach, it has been created by a volcanic eruption underneath the ice. So quite some spectacular scenery that you have. The ice, of course, as well, it has gone back and forth here throughout the development of this land, and therefore it has left, it's broken off quite a bit of chunks of lava as well, or chunks of stone. you're going to see these stones alongside the farms that are here as well. A lot of these stones are actually hollow on the inside, have caves within them, and they have been used by the farmers throughout the centuries here as barns for their sheep. Still are some of them. You might see that these stones, they have literally they have doors on them where you can go in, and in most cases they would be barns for their livestock. Literally everything here was pitch black. There was not a single straw of grass. Everything was covered with ash, and daytime turned into night here because all the ash made the visibility zero. So this was in the spring, so it was a lot of livestock, they were already out, and people were quite concerned about the consequences for the livestock that was here. The amazing thing about this type of ash is that it kind of just spreads everywhere. You cannot stop it from coming into your houses and whatnot, and it is quite spectacular. But the eruption that took place here, as we are kind of coming towards the most southern tip of Iceland, it was interesting because the winds, they were blowing straight south at this time. So all the lava, all the ash, there was a huge ash plume into the air here, and all the ash, it was blowing straight southwards, affecting the air traffic in the British Isles, in Europe, etc., but not in Iceland actually. If you think of it, Keflavik Airport, it's a bit further up west north here, and that wasn't affected. In Reykjavik, we were not affected at all by this eruption here. So we could actually fly. We could fly to Norway, we could fly to Canada, just everything but south, so to say. But for 3 weeks with intermissions, the airspace in over 20 countries in Europe was closed due to this enormous ash cloud that was flying about here. And like I mentioned earlier, just about 10 million people had their flights cancelled. Vatnajökull here, he is actually quite a small volcano, and the glacier itself is quite a small glacier. It's the 8th largest glacier in Iceland out of the 13 that we have, so he's not very big, and the eruption itself is not very big. But what happens is that when these volcanoes that we have, when they lie underneath ice, then the lava that comes up, in the pressure of it and the combustion power when the lava touches the ice, means that the lava is just splintered and it explodes into a trillion little pieces, and that is what causes so much ash. And as Iceland's largest volcanic systems actually lie underneath ice, all of them, then it means that mostly the volcanic eruptions that we have here are quite ash intense in a sense. And just to perhaps give you a perspective on how dangerous this ash is, I did a very silly thing when I was decorating my house, and it's a long story, but it turned out that my aunt, she's an artist, and for whatever reason she got several sacks of ash from Eyjafjallajökull that was stored in my shed. And one day I was painting my bedroom, and I was gonna kind of mix sand into the paint and spread that on the wall because you get a certain amount of texture. And as I was doing this, very quickly I ran out of sand, and I thought, I had all this ash out in the shed, it kind of looks like sand, I might as well just use that. So I mixed that into my paint and I splashed that all to my walls, and it dried. And then I touched the walls and I realized that I had plastered my walls with teeniest tiny pieces of glass, which is actually what the ash is. And if you touch my bedroom walls, you're gonna slash your hands up. You literally you will bleed whenever you touch that wall because it will rip your skin apart. And that is how dangerous ash is. That is just how it is. The tiniest pieces of glass that are incredibly sharp. So if it will rip your skin apart in my bedroom, you can imagine when a jet engine just gets huge amounts of that into its engine, and it just sandblasts, it rips apart the engines from the inside. So I would, considering that, I know that they're saying that these days they have airplanes and filters that are gonna make it possible for them to fly through future ash clouds. Looking at the state of my walls, then if there is an ash cloud up there, I'm not going to be flying through it, for sure. On the left-hand side, in just a few moments, this is where you further in, in the valley here, further in there. In good visibility, you can see, you can almost see the crater itself. But this is just straight in there towards your left, as we're coming by here, is where the ash plume was standing straight up. So if you've seen any photos from the eruption of vatnajökull, then this is where most of it is taken, because behind this farm is where kind of the ash plume was straight into the earth. What is quite spectacular with vatnajökull is that, remember I told you that everything here was covered with ash. It was absolutely grey and black and nothing came up. And there was, like I mentioned, quite a bit of concern about the vegetation and about the animals. But the amazing thing was that a year later, the next year, actually just a few months later, as summer came along, the ash completely disappeared into the ground and the vegetation came up above it. And a year later, they had the best harvest that they had ever had in the whole south part here, because the ash, actually, there's a lot of minerals and nutrients in ash, and the ash worked as fertilizer for this entire area. So it was quite spectacular. The fact is that you need to kill off the vegetation, the ash layer needs to be at least 20 centimeters thick. If it is 20 centimeters thick and above, then everything will die below. But beyond that, actually, the vegetation is just going to rise above it and use it up again. So it's quite good.
And on there, you only live what? Let's push our car. That was awesome. That was awesome. I got drenched by skogafoss. Literally, my jacket's not too bad. It's my jeans. My jeans ain't waterproof.
A bit of a glimpse of it. Otherwise, you're going to see plenty of glaciers as we come further to the largest one that we have in Iceland, called Vatnajökull, which is where we're going to visit the glacier lagoon in the afternoon, and where you are going to be hiking, those of you in Skaftafell as well. But Katla here, she is the one that dominates this area and that has created more or less the nature in this area. Katla is one of Iceland's largest volcanoes, and one of our scariest, you might say. She is, I told you about Eyjafjallajökull before. She is considered to be his big sister, so to say. She is 15 times the size of him, and has an enormous caldera, so to say, an enormous crater from where her eruptions come. But that, of course, all lies underneath the ice. Mýrdalsjökull is Iceland's fourth largest glacier, and it lies on top of her. So when she has an eruption, of course, she needs to melt through all that ice first in order for the lava to come up. So she is the one that has created the mountains around here. She is the one that has created Black Beach over there. And as you're going to see in a bit as we come further down, she's created some pretty massive black sands and such as well. Katla is, she erupts about every 100 to 200 years, so to say. She last had an eruption in about 99 years ago. She had a small one in 2011. It didn't break through the ice though, so it kind of doesn't really count, but it had a bit of a massive flood. I'll tell you about that as we come closer to it, and you'll see the results of that. But otherwise, she is the volcano that at the moment we are most concerned about here in Iceland. Of course, living in Iceland means that you're quite used to these various eruptions taking place here and there. But Katla is, as she lies underneath huge amounts of ice, then there is a lot of ash that comes out of her. And her eruptions can last for quite some time. And if you consider that we have developed all of international air traffic more or less within the last 100 years, and if you consider that none of these Icelandic really big volcanoes have actually erupted in the last 100 years, then international air traffic truly hasn't been tested by these large Icelandic volcanoes. But Katla is rumbling. She is due for her next eruption. It is incredibly difficult to predict a volcanic eruption. We cannot predict it. What we can do is that we measure the seismic activity, the amount of earthquakes that we have in the volcano and around the volcano, and in the ice, of course, as well, as these volcanoes lie underneath ice sheets. And they measure that, and an increased level of earthquakes indicate that there is an eruption about to take place, as that indicates magma is shifting between the chambers. So for the last few years now, Katla has had kind of these so-called earthquake swarms that indicate that something is about to happen, but you never know why and when. When her eruption starts, it will give people here in the south coast, and particularly the people in Vik that you're about to drive through, it will give them 30 minutes. They will get 30 minutes to evacuate from the area before the flash flood will come from Katla. So that is, that's not much. But it's estimated that Katla, the next time she goes off, that she might impact the world's air traffic for 6 months up to a year, which is quite a bit, and enormous amounts of ash goes into the atmosphere. Katla is even expected to have an impact on the world's temperature, as with so much ash going into the atmosphere, it will partially block the sun, and as such it will lower the Earth's temperature a bit. But unfortunately, in many ways, that is not a solution to the world's global warming, as it is only a temporary thing that will last for a couple of years when she has her eruption. So just above us here towards our left, further in there, we're going to be driving around this mountain, and hopefully, as I think is looking a bit better ahead of us, then hopefully I'm able to show you kind of where her crater lies underneath the ice here. We'll see.
Okay, so we are here in Vatnajökull Glacier, the national park in Iceland, and me and my friend and Donna, we've come a different way, and with that many people have come this way, because look, this is my view. With it. But yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of hiking. I might have to put the strap on my head so I can go when what's saying. But yeah, if you look at behind me, if I fall, that's all. But yeah, it's good. And then I come out, I want my camera. Yeah, he's a bit scared, he's a bit of a pull. But yeah, let's have a look. Right, remember what I said about sinking sand?
Yeah.
I know that I am hearing some really freaky noises.
Yeah, right.
Do you know, all of a sudden I've got scared.
Like fucking stones falling in.
Doesn't it? I'm Bear Grylls. I know there.
Guess what?
Guess what? I can see a big fuck off drop.
Guess what, Ryan?
No, it's not actually that big, peoples, but.
Ryan, we could have went down now and then stones there, that cave there.
That's not a cave.
You know, if we went that way, that was a cave off.
I know. You need to explore.
You said it's sand up there.
The sand's a bit iffy, but.
Yeah, that's it.
Honestly.
Yeah, I'm alright, down here, Ryan.
On the road again. When you see ice, don't stand on it. I know, I swear to God, if they have a flood now, I'm fucked. I know, they come in, I want a picture of it, come on. Not being a freaking puff. I'm the only one on this glacier at the minute. and bits are falling off. Ooh. That was the wrong idea to do, wasn't it? Oh, don't it, it's not a cave. This is awesome. Look at this formation. Oh. Look at that. I'm on top of the world. Yeah. Look at that. I know, seriously, this bit is cool. Look at this. This need a picture here. Have a look. Get it like that. Why? Okay, so we're back and we're a lot closer. And there's stuff falling off the sides. There's a lot of gold down here. Seriously, actually, there's a lot. And as you can see, the weather's made a turn for the worst, and it's pissing it down. Literally, but I want to show you the side of this cave. Stop that. I am climbing up a waterfall when we come. Spider-Man! Default. I can get higher. I'm literally climbing up a waterfall. I could get up high, but I'm not. I know I'm reaching a limit. And done it! Not that bad. Not that bad. Can't hear you. There's better views in the world, but we can't do this one. How quick do you think I can get down? I can get higher. Look, that's easy enough, ain't it? That's not high, is it? High. I'm quite high up. So there's Antoni, you can see him. Got it! try and call the let's try and call the avalanche. Oh, it worked. Do a bigger one. Nah, it's not working. Not bad, dude. I'm looking at a waterfall. I'm on top of the world. Can you hear that? Not bad anyway. This is the highest I'm going to go, I think. About 200 feet up, I'll say. Yeah. I think it's got a bit higher. Not bad for someone who's scared of heights. I'll go down now. I'm going down the waterfall and he comes. I'm going down the waterfall and he comes. I'll bit better. Quite slippery. That was inevitable, weren't it? Bastard.